Z had always known her place in the house. Unseen, unheard, and utterly unimportant. At 17, she had mastered the silent routine of invisibility. Every morning began with the clang of Cola's alarm, not hers. She was expected to rise before him, iron his clothes, shine his shoes, and prepare his breakfast to the exact detail their mother demanded. If the eggs were too runny or the plantains not golden enough, it was Z who heard the lash of words, and sometimes more. Cola, just a year older, was the crown prince of the household. Their parents praised his every breath, acting as though his very existence was a blessing to the family. He lounged on the couch while Z scrubbed the floor, scrolled through his phone while she fetched his water, and smirked every time she was reprimanded for not serving quickly enough. He had never washed his own plate, let alone cleaned his room, and their parents saw nothing wrong with it. "Your brother is a boy," their mother often said, as though it explained everything. At school, Z kept to herself. She was brilliant, always among the top 3 in her class, but no one at home acknowledged it. Her report cards were tossed aside while Cola's average grades were celebrated with outings and cake. Whenever Z spoke of wanting to study further, maybe win a scholarship to university, her father would scoff. "You? Study? You'll never be more than a housemaid," he had said once, laughing while tying his belt. The words stung worse than the chores, worse than even the beatings she sometimes received when she dared to protest. But Z never forgot them. Each time she was told she was nothing, she wrote more. Each time she was punished for being lazy after cleaning the whole compound, she read deeper into her textbooks. She knew she had to endure it now, but something inside her refused to break. When Cola told her to clean his muddy shoes again, after walking through the house she had just mopped, she simply nodded and obeyed. But her mind was elsewhere, somewhere far away, beyond the walls of her parents' home, beyond the jeers and cruel jokes. In her heart, a fire was beginning to kindle. No one noticed. Not yet. But Z had seen enough. She had scrubbed enough. And she had learned to dream while sweeping. They didn't know it, but the girl they overlooked was watching, calculating, preparing. The stench hit her first. Z stood at the threshold of Cola's bathroom, disgust curling in her gut. Used tissues littered the floor, wet footprints stained the tiles, and toothpaste smeared the sink like careless graffiti. She hadn't cleaned it just yesterday. She'd scrubbed it spotless. But now it looked like a dump site. She turned to find Cola lounging on the couch, grinning as he took a long sip from his juice. Their eyes met. He didn't have to say anything. He never did. This was his game. Mess up what she had cleaned, then sit back and watch her scrub it again like a servant. And every time, the mother would defend him. This time, Zuri didn't move. She stood there, arms crossed, silent. "What are you standing there for?" her mother barked from the kitchen. "Clean it up." "I just cleaned it yesterday," Z replied, her voice low but steady. "He did that on purpose." Her mother stormed into the hallway like a storm cloud ready to burst. "And? So what? Are you now deciding which chores you want to do? Who do you think you are?" Her voice climbed higher, sharper. "You think you're better than your own family now." Z didn't answer. Her silence only enraged her more. The slap came quick and hard, ringing across her cheek like a shot. "Ungrateful girl," her mother screamed, dragging her by the arm toward the bathroom. Z tried to resist, pulling her arm free. That was her mistake. Her father entered the scene, belt already halfway off. "You think you're grown now," he shouted. "You think you can disrespect your mother in this house." She didn't get a chance to explain, only to cover her arms as the belt struck. Once, twice, then again. The pain bloomed instantly, white-hot and blinding. The belt snapped against her back, her legs, her side. Cola peeked from the living room, amused. "Clean that bathroom, and don't let me hear another word," her mother hissed before slamming the door. When the house quieted, Z curled up in the corner, body shaking, lip bleeding. The pain was sharp, but not unfamiliar. What hurt more was the helplessness. How quickly they turned to violence to silence her. How normal it was in this house to be beaten for having a voice. She stared at the dainty floor of that bathroom, tears dripping down her face. And in that moment, something shifted. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She wasn't even broken, but something cold and certain filled her chest. "I will never let them own another piece of me again," she whispered. It wasn't a threat. It was a vow, one that would change everything. The house was silent except for the ticking clock in the hallway and the distant hum of a fan in her father's room. Everyone had gone to bed, believing that the beating had done its job, that Z had been silenced again, that she had learned her place. But Zuri wasn't lying awake in fear anymore. She was moving with purpose. She tiptoed across the room, heart pounding in her chest, and pulled the faded school backpack from under her bed. It had once been Cola's, cast off when a new designer one came along. For her, Hamaderns were the norm. But tonight, it wasn't just a bag, it was a lifeline. Inside, she packed her most precious items: 3 textbooks, 2 notebooks, and her pencil case. She folded a second set of clothes, tucked in a bar of soap, a toothbrush, and a little packet of biscuits. Then, she pulled out the money she had stashed beneath a floor tile. Naira notes saved from months of tutoring a neighbor's daughter in math when no one in her house was watching. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a bus ticket and maybe 2 days of food if she was careful. She scribbled one line on a torn piece of paper and left it on her pillow. "Don't worry. You won't have to look at me again." Her feet trembled as she stepped outside, the night air thick with heat and possibility. She avoided the creaky gate, slipping through the side where the fence had a crack wide enough for his skinny body. She didn't look back at the house, the walls that held more bruises than memories. At the station, the clerk didn't even ask her age. He barely looked up as he sold her a one-way ticket to Enugu, the nearest city she remembered from an old radio ad about a youth NGO that helped abused girls get back into school. She held the ticket like it was gold. The bus was nearly empty, just a few traders with sacks of dried fish and a snoring old man at the back. Z took the window seat, clutching her bag like it might vanish if she blinked. As the engine roared to life and the bus pulled away from the station, tears slid silently down her cheeks. Not from fear, not from regret, but from release. The first taste of freedom was bitter and sweet all at once. She pressed her forehead against the glass, watching the only life she had ever known fade into the night. "They said I was worthless," she whispered to the stars above. "Now I'll show them what worth really looks like." And with that, she closed her eyes, not to rest, but to dream. Because for the first time, those dreams finally felt like they belonged to her. The shelter stood behind a rusting blue gate on a dusty street lined with peeling buildings and quiet neighbors. It wasn't large or fancy, but to Z, it was a palace. The sign read House of Rising Daughters, a place where girls like her, discarded and bruised, could begin again. Inside, bunk beds creaked with laughter and stories from girls who had survived worse than Z ever imagined. There were rules, chores, and a strict schedule, but no belts, no insults, just structure and safety. And for the first time in her life, Z didn't have to walk on eggshells. She simply had to show up, do her part, and learn. In the mornings, she attended a public secondary school nearby, waking before sunrise, walking with other girls from the shelter, and sitting in the front row with a hunger to learn that burned brighter than ever. In the afternoons, she scrubbed dishes and waited tables at a small roadside restaurant owned by a kind widow who paid her cash every Friday. And every night, Z climbed up to the shelter's rooftop with a torchlight and her books, the cool breeze brushing her skin like the embrace of freedom. One evening, as she worked through an accounting problem from an online course she'd signed up for at the cyber cafe, a woman sat beside her on the rooftop. Tall, composed, and elegant in her head wrap and anchor gown, she introduced herself as Auntie Efima, the shelter's volunteer counselor. "I see how you study, Z. You remind me of myself when I was your age," she said gently. "What are you dreaming of?" Z looked down at her workbook, then up at the stars. "I want to be free. I want to build something that no one can take away from me." Auntie Efima smiled with knowing eyes. "Then let's start building." From that night forward, Efima took her under her wing. She helped Zuri enroll in an online scholarship prep course and guided her through entrepreneurship lectures in the evenings. When Zuri showed interest in business finance, Auntie brought her books, old notes from university, even linked her with a local businesswoman to observe weekend operations. Z soaked up everything. Every naira she earned from the restaurant went into a little tin box under her bed labeled Future. Some nights she ate only bread and tea to save more. Her hunger no match for her discipline. But the rooftop, that was her sanctuary. Up there, the city lights shimmered, and the sky was wide and limitless. She would lie back on the worn mat, books open on her chest, and whisper to herself, "Out here, I finally breathe. I finally exist." And with every lesson, every test passed, every night she didn't have to flinch at a knock on her door, Z stitched together the life she had promised herself on that bus ride. Quietly, fiercely, piece by piece. Back in the town Z had fled, the cracks in the perfect image her family tried to uphold were beginning to show, loudly and publicly. Kola had never been one for books, but without Zuri around to do his homework or gently remind him of exams, his grades plummeted. He had barely scraped through secondary school, and when it came time to apply for university, he missed the deadline, too busy competing in online video games and bragging about his social media following. Their parents, still clinging to the illusion of his greatness, brushed it all aside. "He's just exploring," their father said to neighbors. "He's taking a break before greatness begins." But behind closed doors, Kola was growing restless and bitter. Used to constant attention and indulgence, he now filled his days gaming into the early hours, sleeping through the morning, and demanding food like a prince in exile. His entitlement, once mistaken for confidence, began to rot into something darker. Then came the car crash. It happened late one Saturday night after Kola had taken the family's Toyota without permission. Drunk on cheap beer and ego, he drove too fast through a narrow street and clipped a vendor's stall. No one was seriously hurt, but the scene drew a crowd, and phones were out in seconds. Within hours, clips of Kola shouting at the vendor and blaming the police were circulating on local WhatsApp groups. The car was totaled. The vendor sued. The family's name, once respected, became a whisper of disgrace in the marketplace. When the relatives started calling, confused and alarmed, Kola didn't hesitate to deflect. "I wouldn't be this stressed if Z hadn't abandoned us," he told an uncle on the phone. "She left everything on me. I'm the one dealing with everything now." His mother picked up the story like gospel. "Zuri's the reason he's like this," she told neighbors with wide eyes and a hand to her chest. "If she hadn't left, maybe he'd still have some peace." She unbalanced the home. They said it enough times, they almost believed it. Not once did they consider that the boy they raised without boundaries had become a man without discipline. Not once did they ask where Z was, or if she was okay. They spoke of her as if she were a ghost who had cursed their house. Meanwhile, Kola sat sulking in the living room, scrolling through his feed, liking photos of people who still saw him as a local celebrity. He didn't realize it yet, but the world was shifting, and the sister he'd mocked, the one they called worthless, was quietly becoming everything he'd never have the discipline to become. But still, the lie lived on. If Z hadn't left, this wouldn't have happened. And no one dared to speak the truth. Time, once Zuri's enemy, became her closest ally. In just a few years, she transformed from a silent, bruised girl scrubbing her brother's shoes into a woman who controlled ledgers, negotiated with CEOs, and calculated profit margins in her sleep. With Auntie Efima's guidance and a growing list of connections, Zuri launched a modest bookkeeping service from a shared co-working space. Just a desk, a borrowed laptop, and a handwritten flyer on a community notice board. She started small, helping market vendors balance their weekly sales, advising roadside tailors on inventory tracking, teaching single mothers how to manage household budgets like microenterprises. Her patience and clarity made her a favorite. Word spread faster than she could have imagined. Clients began coming to her, first from around the neighborhood, then across the city. She was never flashy. She didn't chase loud success. She listened more than she spoke, showed up on time, and made people feel seen. For many of her early clients, she wasn't just managing their numbers. She was helping them reclaim dignity in business. One day, a client introduced her to a young startup struggling with financial planning. Zuri didn't just fix their books. She redesigned their financial model and created a scalable plan. Within a year, the startup received investment, and Zuri's name traveled into new rooms. That's when the doors really began to open. By 23, she had not only tripled her income but had also invested in local ventures, one of which was a fast-rising logistics firm serving rural areas. She became a silent partner, choosing not to chase the spotlight. Her joy came from the control, the equity, the freedom. She bought a modest but modern home on the city's edge, painted it yellow, and filled it with books and warm lights. No one shouted at her there. No one called her worthless. She decorated the rooftop first. Every evening, she sat where the stars met her memories, laptop open, numbers dancing across her screen. The pain hadn't vanished. The wounds from her past hadn't magically healed. But now, they didn't haunt her. They drove her. Sometimes she'd run her fingers over the faint scar on her arm, the one from the belt, and whisper. Success didn't erase the pain. It just gave it a purpose. And that purpose was clear: to rise so far beyond what they believed of her that she never had to explain herself again. To become a name not attached to pity, but to legacy. To prove, without shouting, that survival could bloom into power. And she wasn't done yet. The community hall in Zuri's old hometown hadn't changed much. Same faded chairs, same buzzing ceiling fans, same smell of dust and overused microphones. But what had changed was the reason people had gathered. Banners lined the walls. Empower her, inspiring young girls for a better tomorrow. Zuri's name was bold on the center one. Keynote speaker, ZE's, entrepreneur and financial consultant. To the girls sitting cross-legged in their uniforms, she was someone worth becoming. To the elders, she was a mystery returned. As Z stepped onto the stage in her simple but elegant anchor dress, phones rose to capture her. Her voice, calm and poised, filled the hall as she shared her journey. Without naming names, without bitterness. She spoke of believing in your own worth, of walking away from places that dim your light, of building something even when you're told you'll never be more than invisible. She could feel their eyes in the crowd, her parents, sitting near the back. Her mother looked thinner than she remembered, her scarf wrapped too tightly, as if trying to hold herself together. Her father's eyes darted about, unwilling to meet hers. Rumors had already reached Z through old classmates. The family had fallen on hard times. Cola had drained their savings. The business deals her father once boasted about had collapsed. Still, Zuri said nothing about it. Not on stage, not in the speech, not even in her eyes. After the event, while posing for photos with the girls, she felt a presence at her side. Her mother approached, smile rehearsed, voice light with pretend concern. Z, my daughter, it's been too long. We were so worried about you. Z nodded politely, keeping the space between them. I'm doing well, thank you. Her mother's smile faltered for a moment before recovering. We've missed you. Things at home haven't been easy. I hope you're well, Z said softly, but her tone was a wall. Not angry, just finished. Then came Cola, standing a few steps behind, hands stuffed in his pockets, face drawn with a permanent scowl. He looked older than his years, like someone who'd been given too much, too soon, and now didn't know how to carry life without a hand to hold. You could have helped me too, you know, he hissed when no one else was listening. Z turned to him, expression calm, eyes sharp. I did, she said. I left. For a moment, silence hung between them. Cola blinked. Maybe he expected anger, maybe guilt, but she gave him neither. She simply walked past him, taking a young girl's hand for a picture, her smile returning. Not for her family, but for the future standing in front of her. The past no longer owned her. It didn't even know how to reach her anymore. It was just after sunset when Z heard the knock at her gate, soft, hesitant, the kind that carried shame. She didn't expect visitors. Her home was quiet by design. Peace was something she'd owned, and she guarded it carefully. From the balcony, she could see their silhouettes in the fading light. Her heart stilled. Her parents, older now, smaller, somehow. Her mother's wrapper was faded, her father's shoulders slumped like someone who had finally run out of pride. The sight stirred nothing in her. Not anger, not joy. Just recognition. Ghosts from a chapter she had already closed. She walked down slowly and opened the gate without a word. Her father spoke first, voice trembling. "Sir, we didn't know where else to go." Her mother stepped forward. "Things have been hard. We lost the shop. Your brother is not doing well. The landlord's threatening to evict us." Z leaned against the frame of the gate, arms folded, face unreadable. She let them speak. They talked of struggles, of mistakes, of how they missed their daughter. They used words like family, forgiveness, start over. Her father's eyes glistened with tears he hadn't dared to shed years ago. Her mother's tone was softer now, pleading rather than commanding. When they finished, Z stayed silent for a moment, as the crickets began to hum and the streetlights flickered on. "I'm sorry things are difficult for you," she said evenly. "But I didn't make your house what it was. You did." Her father opened his mouth, but she raised a hand gently. "You didn't just fail to protect me. You broke me, on purpose. You made sure I knew I didn't belong." Her mother shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't know any better." "No," Z replied. "You just didn't care to." They stood there in silence, expecting something. Maybe pity, maybe a miracle. Then Z continued, voice clear and calm. "There's a girl in the neighborhood. Uche's daughter. She's bright, but she can't afford school. I'll sponsor her from now till university if she wants it." Her parents blinked, confused. "I give back," Z said firmly. "But not to those who broke me on purpose." Her father's lips trembled. Her mother's eyes began to water. Z didn't flinch. She reached into her pocket and handed her mother a card. "If Uche's daughter needs supplies, have a guardian call this number. That's all." Then, gently but firmly, she closed the gate. She didn't slam it. That wasn't her style anymore. She simply walked away, barefoot on cool tiles, her soul lighter with every step. No rage, no vengeance, just peace, earned and protected. And on the other side of the gate, for the first time, her parents truly understood. They had raised a stranger, one who had learned how to love, just not them. Z stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, flanked by bright-eyed girls in matching blue uniforms. The sign above the gates read, "The Rebuild Foundation, 4 daughters who were told they were nothing." Cameras clicked, reporters scribbled, but Z remained composed, her smile soft and sincere. The foundation had been a dream in the shadows. Planted on nights she cried alone under the stars, watered with every scar, every insult, every whispered, "You're worthless." Now, it was real. A sanctuary where girls like her could be seen, heard, educated, and empowered. Each staff member was carefully chosen, many of them women who had been overlooked, undervalued, or silenced. Some from towns like hers, some from her very own town. They came with baggage, yes, but also with brilliance. Z gave them a chance no one had given her, and they rose. She never moved back. The house she bought was far enough away to breathe freely, but close enough to still reach those who needed her. She had no desire to walk the streets where her pain was born, not out of fear, but because she'd outgrown them. Then came the call from a journalist. A documentary team wanted to feature her story in a film about African women rebuilding their lives after family trauma. Zuri agreed, but only under one condition: no names. No faces from a past. Just the journey. The documentary aired nationally. It opened with a shot of Z on the rooftop, torchlight in hand, reading under the stars. It followed her rise, her battles, her victories, her foundation. Her voice narrated pieces, steady and thoughtful. Viewers cried. Girls wrote letters. Sponsors came forward. And one night, in a dimly lit living room in her hometown, her parents sat in front of a flickering television, watching the daughter they once whipped, dismissed, and erased become a beacon. But their names were never mentioned. Not once. They weren't villains. They were irrelevant. Cola's downfall had been more dramatic. After a string of failed ventures and borrowed money gone missing, he was caught trying to scam a local merchant using fake invoices. His mugshot circled WhatsApp groups the same way his party photos once did. His fall was public, but no one came to rescue him. Even the family's distant relatives, who took in Z's parents out of pity, refused to speak of him. Z read about it in passing and said nothing. She didn't need to. Her revenge wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't slamming doors or screaming truths. It was this: a life built brick by brick on everything they said she couldn't do. A name that echoed in boardrooms and schoolyards, not kitchens and corridors. A legacy that didn't need their permission or their memory. Revenge wasn't shouting, she once told a group of young women at a leadership forum. It was living louder than their hate ever could. And the room had erupted in applause, not for her pain, but for her rise beyond it. The retreat was held in a quiet lodge nestled between hills and whispering trees, far from cities, far from noise, far from anyone who ever told a girl to stay small. Zuri walked barefoot through the morning dew, her long wrapped skirt brushing over grass as sunlight kissed her skin. Young women from all over the country had gathered. Some had known pain, others were just discovering their voice. But all of them had come to learn from her. From the girl who once scrubbed her brother's bathroom and now stood at the helm of an empire built from scars turned into stepping stones. Inside the open-air hall, rows of girls sat with notepads, eyes wide and eager. Behind Zuri, a banner read, "Lead Anyway, a weekend with Z's." She stood before them, simple and elegant, with no microphone, only her voice. A voice that once trembled in silence now echoed with strength. She shared stories, not of revenge, but of rising. Not of bitterness, but of boundaries. She spoke of strategy, not just survival. Of money, not just motivation. Of building, not begging. She showed them how to write business plans, how to own their names, how to heal without apology. And then, near the end, she took them to a room inside the lodge. A long, spotless hallway of mirrors lined both sides. "This," she said, "is your final session." Each girl looked at her reflection, some for the first time with love. Z turned to her own mirror, faced it fully, and smiled. "I was told I'd never be more than a servant," she said, her voice calm and clear. "That my only value was in scrubbing, cooking, serving others while being starved of love." She paused. "But I scrub no more. Not floors. Not my soul. Not for anyone who can't see my worth." Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with pride. "They told me to clean his toilet," she said, turning toward the girls. "Instead, I clean my future of them." Silence fell, deep and full. Then a single clap. Then another. Then a standing ovation that shook the stillness. Not for Z alone, but for what she represented. A girl who broke without becoming bitter. A woman who rose without seeking revenge. A leader who didn't need a title to prove her crown. That night, under the stars, the girls wrote letters to their younger selves. And on the rooftop, Zuri's favorite place, they whispered their promises into the sky. She stood at the edge, smiling to herself. Not because she had won, but because she had outgrown every room that once tried to shrink her. And from that moment forward, the world would only ever meet the girl who scrubbed no more. Only the woman who built, who healed, who led,